episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. And now that the NFL draft is over, it is time for us to go over the entire offseason and encapsulate our winners and losers, because I fear some of you did win and some of you did lose. But before we get into that, Matt, Theo, how are you doing on this beautiful Sunday evening?
I'm doing pretty good. I've been debating Jake from State Farm, the guy, and
You've been
how do you
debating
feel
him?
about that? I haven't been debating. I've been thinking about it a lot. Debating is the wrong
No,
word.
I thought the same thing. I'm like, how?
You guys were in a beef on Twitter or something?
Do you think, some people say that job is really soulless, sort of like representing a corporation like that, and they throw to they talk about the Subway guy from Community, which is a great bit that they do on there. Do you guys feel like it's super soulless, or it is soulless, but it's also a really sweet job where you get to go to a bunch of games and sit courtside, and you just have to wear a State Farm jacket and then make some really non-offensive.
Oh yeah, I don't blame the guy for doing
That's
it.
what I think, dude. I think that guy has one of the best setups.
He's just
of anybody. Yeah,
he's just
he's
not act he's just acting for State Farm. I guess
I just looked it up and he makes $15K per commercial. I think he's doing all right, man.
I'd do it. I'd do it in a heartbeat, man. I really.
I do think I don't know, so many joys that we seem to get are manufactured. Oh my God, it's Jake from State Farm. Who cares, dude? He's just a commercial actor. And why is this on the front page of Bleacher Reporter or something like that? I definitely think if he tries too hard to parlay this into an actual fame,
you couldn't parlay it into much more than what it is. But if you were fine with that, which I feel like you easily could be if you're making bank, I don't know, man.
I guess I appreciate it from a PR standpoint. There are a lot of ads or people who make ads that go a long time without getting a hit like that. And somehow they insisted upon themselves so much that Jake from State Farm entered pop culture. And they even successfully rebranded him from the white khakis guy. And now it's now it's a different guy. And he's kind of famous in a different way. He doesn't have any memorable punchlines, or none of his commercials actually stand out as being particularly funny or anything. They just insisted upon him so much that he became famous. So they got two hits out of Jake from State Farm in two different ways.
Yeah.
I feel like Flo had a little bit more of a bag. I don't know if that's just total nonsense, but I feel like
I always wonder why the insurance commercials get so much play, and all the insurance commercials have characters and running bits for years, and they try to be funny, and some of them are probably the funniest commercials on TV. Geico is, if we're ranking funny commercials, it's not a high bar, but Geico definitely is up there, and State Farm is definitely up there. Why is that industry so focused on being funny and none of it's just insurance?
I feel like I read something about that one time, but I don't remember what exactly it was. I always feel a little bit bad when I laugh at a commercial. I always feel like it's wrong somehow. You know what I mean? Where it's that wasn't, I'm not buying that still, that's not working on me.
I'm looking at Kevin Miles, the actor for Jake from State Farm, and he's got a pretty big list of things that he's done other than Jake from State Farm. He's been in a pretty substantial number of TV shows. He was in the iCarly reboot. He was in, obviously he's been in 2K as Jake from State Farm. He's been on Criminal Minds before. He's been on SWAT. He's been on Underdogs. That's a pretty substantial list of shows.
I wonder if this will kill his career or if it will make him more.
This is probably about what you're doing once you become the mascot for a brand. And there's nothing wrong with that, bro. That's more successful than 95% of people who act. Probably more.
Probably more.
So shout out to him. But you guys want to get into some football?
Yeah,
by any chance? Or-
let's talk. I would like to know. Maybe I'll look it up. Why insurance commercials try to be funny? I think maybe just because insurance is the most boring thing to talk about, and they can't be like, pay
Right.
us $200 every month in case your house gets blown away by a hurricane, like 10 times a football game. That's just depressing. So they have to get like
the real solution, though, if you're trying to pick insurance companies, is to pick one that doesn't advertise.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. But anyway,
yeah, let's talk
about these free agent and just off season, free agent and draft, and just from all angles, winners and losers this off season. Let's start with winners. Let's start on a positive note. Matt, why don't you kick us off here? Who's your first winner here?
My first winner. We'll go round robin. We'll do a round of winners, one each, and then a round of losers, one each.
Yep.
Okay.
I want to go ahead and get it out of the way. I mean, the Bears won the offseason in the sense that they went in with a lot of assets and made good on it. I didn't necessarily agree with like every single move that they made. Like I agree, DeAndre Swift is like not the greatest running back in the world, I don't think, and that doesn't really move me. He's more of a name than he is like a great player, probably. But to get Caleb Williams, to make the right call in the Justin Fields situation, which at one time did not seem guaranteed and was a big debate, although I wonder how seriously the Bears ever considered it, is a good thing. And I think the way they approached wide receiver, getting Keenan Allen, having that security net in case Adunze didn't fall to them, but then still being able to go and get Adunze when he was there at 9 because it wasn't too big of an investment, I thought is fantastic. And now you're sitting here with a quarterback prospect who is generational or really, really great or whatever word you want to use that doesn't, make you mad or say it's going too far. And you're sitting here with, I mean, one of the best situations that any top-end young quarterback has gone into in a while, it feels like. I think the receivers are nuts. I think the expectation is that they will make the playoffs. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but that's certainly the bar. And the reason why that's the bar is because they've done they've done a great job, and it's a big deal. So even if what they did is like kind of layups, it almost feels like the points are the points, man. I'd be really excited if I was a Bears fan. They're in one of the best positions of any team in the NFL going forward.
Yeah, they're kind of 2023 offseason winners, if you think about it. Like the fact that their Panthers trade aged as well as it did. It's like they're coming back to collect their wins from moves they did a while ago. But yeah, it feels like everybody's a winner. Ryan Poles, I was questioning his legacy, and now I can't really say shit, right? No one, like, he put together a hell of a roster. I feel like Caleb is a winner because he's, instead of entering the league on the Panthers, he gets to enter the league on Chicago, and he gets to have DJ Moore. I guess maybe if the trade never happened, he still could have entered the league if the Panthers.
You're right, bro. Honestly, if the Panthers never made that trade, they'd have DJ Moore, and they'd probably have...
They'd be in the exact same situation as the Bears, to be completely honest with you. So,
that's so true, man.
If they just didn't make the trade. But yeah, I mean, it does. Caleb was a winner. Everybody in Chicago is a winner. The fans are winners, and they didn't have to win as much as they did this offseason. Like the fact that Rome Odunze fell to them, and
that was a real stroke. Look, and again, it seems like the layup pick, but there was a few teams that didn't take that layup ahead of them. Yeah. And sometimes like doing the thing that feels like very easy but right to do isn't a guarantee. It always feels like sometimes your team isn't the team doing that. If you root for certain franchises, I won't name any names. It's a boring one. I don't want to spend too long on them unless you guys have a lot more to say, but I'd feel bad if we didn't mention them. It's like,
I think they were probably number one. They were probably number one in all of our lists, or at least up there for all of us. It's the boring pick, but it's the right pick. Same thing we said for the draft. So yeah, no reason to not get them out of the way. Theo, who is your biggest winner?
I'll stick in the NFC North for a second, and I'll say the Detroit Lions.
I had them number 2.
It happened a long time ago, but it's easy to forget. But they kept Ben Johnson.
They kept Ben Johnson,
and they are huge offseason winners for that. They don't have to start over. They they avoided all brain drain, really. And they avoided any kind of monster Jared Goff contract, which I like. You get another year to see if he can do it again. And if he doesn't, then you'll kind of understand what your ceiling is. And if he does, like, the price probably remains about the same, to be completely honest with you. I don't really think it's any kind of disaster for the Lions to kick that can down the road as long as they can, just to maximize the amount of information that they have. But they did get the Amon-Ra St. Brown deal done. I thought they had a great draft with Terrion Arnold, which we just talked about. And
Yes.
the only really thing that counts as a loss for them is that the Bears were the biggest winners, right? Like the NFC North got tougher.
It's going to be a tough. It's going to be a tough.
But outside
division.
of that, like, I was kind of worried after the Detroit Lions lost to the San Francisco 49ers. Is it going to be like, oh, they're going to give Goff a bag? They have a really late first round pick. Ben Johnson's about to leave, and all that kind of worked out well for the Lions. They got a falling star late in the first, and everything kind of came up. Aaron Glenn, it feels like.
I 100% agree. I would like to say, I was saying
Brad Holmes. Holy shit! I said Aaron Glenn. Holy shit! Wrong Lion.
I have to say, I think right when the Lions lost the NFC Championship game, everybody's take instantly was like, well, they're going to regress to the mean next year, and that won't happen again, and they won't be that good again, and it's going to go worse. And like on average, you're right. Getting back to the NFC Championship game is really tough. And when you have one of those peak seasons, it's tough to stay there again. Most teams fall off. But I think it was an overreaction for people to just assume that before we even saw their offseason. I remember the Bengals were a team like that. Yeah. They made the Super Bowl, and everyone's like, well, they're going to completely fall off. But they had a good offseason, and they didn't make the Super Bowl again, but they were still a really good team.
And they avoided Lou going anywhere, right? Like,
and they avoided Lou going anywhere. Mm-hmm. The Lions, I think, were in the exact same spot. I said, we got to see how it plays out. Ben Johnson stays. It's like, okay, now it's really like you got the same group of guys. Can you get everybody back and then be aggressive on top of that? Sewell, back on a big contract. Amon-Ra St. Brown back on a big contract. Both of those are huge extensions, and getting them done as soon as you can, absolutely the right call. Not paying Goff, I agree, is a good thing. And then they really attacked their needs. They did everything they could at cornerback. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but they're not going to have that be a big problem. So if you're a Lions fan, you're sitting here saying, how can this team be better than last year? Well, the secondary is going to be different. It's a completely different unit. We added a bunch of guys. I think maybe not everyone's going to work out, but if they can go 50% on their secondary additions, they're going to have a pretty strong unit.
Yeah, and I think in their front seven as well, DJ Reader, Marcus Davenport.
Reader was a humongous ad.
Mekhi Wingo, obviously. But just a guy that I was high on. But still, like, I like their I
thought it was a good pick too. I agree
on that area. So yeah, I think that the Lions did what they needed to do to kind of remain the favorites, even though the Bears are really challenging and the Packers added depth and came on strong last year, and the Vikings got a franchise quarterback. You still look at this Lions team, and man, at the end of last year, I was saying, like, how many years will they run this division? And now it just kind of looks like they're going to run it back and be pretty good again. So they were huge winners for me. Blaiden, how about you? Who's your big winner this offseason?
I've gone back and forth on this, but I do think the Texans have to be considered winners, even though the structuring of the Diggs deal, I think, is wrong. I think they've mishandled that. But in terms of just additions and the making good on CJ Stroud's rookie contract, I don't know if any team has done a better job than they have in that area. Adding Diggs, they lost Grenard, but they brought in Danielle Hunter. They brought in Joe Mixon, which, whether or not you think that's a positive addition, we can have a discussion on that. But I just feel like, yeah, maybe. But I don't know. I feel like Diggs and Hunter alone are just huge plays that, you have a quarterback who was at points in time last year an MVP candidate as a rookie. To go out and make the big move now while you still can, I think is the right thing to do, even though I disagree with the structuring of the Diggs deal.
I think the Diggs deal is incredibly risky. I think there's real potential that you maybe have to sign him to a new massive deal, even if he's good this year. And he didn't look great at the back half of last year, and you gave up picks to do it. And then if you do have to give him a new massive deal, is that going to age poorly? I like being aggressive for a receiver, but I wonder if there were better options, to be completely honest with you.
Maybe like
I didn't
Higgins
think their draft. Yeah, like maybe one of those type of guys I would have been way more interested in. I still think he can be a good piece, and it can be good in the short term. I don't want to like write him off or anything because of like a rough stretch, but I also don't want to ignore that. And honestly, like Hunter is also up there in age, and they lost Grenard, who was a good player for him. So it doesn't feel like the biggest addition ever. They made a lot of signings and they were aggressive, and that's the right strategy. But with any sort of process, it only works if you're like right about the individual decisions. You know, your process can be great, but if the guys you add aren't that good, then it doesn't really make a difference. I don't think they necessarily like got worse. I don't think it's like a disaster offseason or anything, but I have some questions about whether or not they really maximized what they have in Stroud. So I wouldn't have them as one of my winners.
Yeah, I tend to agree where it's like the Diggs move added talent to the Texans. I like their roster. I like how quickly they turned it around. But the Diggs move is cool because Stroud is there. And we think as long as Stroud is there, you can kind of do no wrong. And like Diggs will be maximized because of Stroud. But you'd probably be saying that no matter what wide receiver they added. And when you think about the second for Diggs on a expiring deal now, I agree with Matt where I'm like, I'm not totally sure if that is the best use of resources. That was kind of confusing to me why they did that. And then the Mixon deal, like it seemed like he was about to get cut and then they traded for him. And again,
the Mixon deal I really dislike.
Not the biggest deal, like not the biggest deal in the world, but still, it's like I'm not totally sure.
I'm not going to say that's a good thing. I'm not going to say I love that. I'm not going to lie. I'm open to being wrong about the Texans offseason. Like I'm not super against their draft. They just weren't like one of my winners, I would say. And it's not like if Diggs and Hunter are good next year, I'm not going to sit back and be like, dude, there's no way. Like I can see it, but I look at the moves and I'm like, I don't know. I don't think that they're surefire slam dunks. It feels like
it's not quite as good as just like keeping Ben Johnson like that, but they did keep Slowick, who was
that is true.
But Slowick's not as good as Ben Johnson to me, so keeping him is big of a win.
Ben Johnson might be the best coordinator in the league. So
exactly,
is anyone as good as keeping Ben Johnson? Probably not.
But so I would say comparing the Lions and the Texans, who are maybe kind of like both in aggressive mode this offseason, I just like the Lions additions of Arnold and Reeder and Rakestraw, and I like a little bit better than I like the Texans. And I think there's more risk. I hate to be a broken record, but in a vacuum, I think you can question some of their moves, and ultimately that's how
it comes down to who hits on their draft picks.
They've got to hit on their draft picks, and your signings need to be good, and this is how you do it.
Yeah.
But I do agree that like ultimately their process was strong of being aggressive when you have the opportunity to. That's
I do agree with you on the Diggs contract is complete madness to me. Have we talked about before where I was looking at Calvin Ridley's deal, and it is the cap hit that he is set to make is $10 million more than what Diggs was set to make in 2025. So,
really?
Like, if Diggs gets a new contract, his cap hit is going to be, I mean, he could argue, if he has a good year this year, like, top receiver in the league money. Like, that would be my
Well, if he's good enough to argue for that type of money, then that's a good
He's worth it. Yeah, it's worth it.
I guess that's fair.
If he plays like at an AJ Brown level, the current leader, if he plays that good, then let him. Then you can like let him walk and take your AJ Brown caliber All Pro year and take it right to the bank, and then say, "See ya." But so that would be good. But yeah, I think the Texans got better. They had an exciting offseason, but their moves just were a little bit more high risk than moves like the Lions and the Bears. And I don't know, Matt, who's your first loser? Let's move on from the Texans and and debate losers here.
Well, if we want to get the big ones out of the way, I don't want to be the super basic guy the whole time, but if you're putting me first, I think the Denver Broncos had a terrible.
That was my
offseason.
first. That was my
largely
first
because I think we talked about this so recently. I don't want to like sit here and lean on it too much, but it doesn't feel like they made any big additions in free agency. I don't think the Bo Nix pick at 12 is particularly good. And then outside of that, I mean, I liked their day 3. I'll say that. I think Franklin and Estime, 2 real solid ads. I think that's going to be 2 good players for them. Outside of that, dude, I think their team building strategy right now is just, it's like, I don't know what the identity of the team is. I think they're probably going to run a lot, like you said, Theo, but I don't think they're particularly talented. I don't think the direction's particularly clear. I agree with the whole Bo Nix competing against Herbert and Mahomes being a really tough battle. Like,
yeah.
And the whole like building around the run game stuff really heavily with a mid quarterback, teams get forced into that. It feels like when there's just like not a good quarterback solution available for them. And maybe I give the Broncos a little bit of a break because unless they traded up to 3 and drafted Drake May, I probably wouldn't have liked what they did at quarterback regardless. Like even if you think JJ McCarthy was a better pick, and I would probably agree because he's younger. And because I think he has some pretty decent upside, I don't think it would have worked out well in Denver. I don't think they're a particularly good situation. So maybe they were just in a bad spot and we're judging them off that no matter what. Like, yeah, they're dealing with the Russ contract and they aren't in position to get a QB. So actually, I think their offseason's bad and they're not going to like be a super great team because they have the like dynasty in their division as well. So all of it like comes together to be really obvious, but I still think Bo Nix at 12 was the wrong call. I still do.
I narrowed it down to even just Sean Payton as the biggest loser. Like I just feel like his legacy looks so bleak right now, and his approval rating since joining the Denver Broncos has just plummeted. Everybody was pissed at him after they benched Russell Wilson, from what I saw on Twitter and in the comment sections of my videos. They thought that was done in a disrespectful manner, and he even though Nate Hackett was kind of worth disrespecting, he did that this last offseason, like talking shit, saying this was like a horribly coached team, we're going to do everything different, and then lost to Hackett, and the future is like just as bad under Peyton. So he's just been like, he's always a bit of an asshole, and I guess he already had Bounty Gate, but to just like go on this smug tour of calling everybody out and saying like, I tricked them into trading up, and
which doesn't make any sense, dude.
Which doesn't make any sense, and the product that you're about to put on the field is going to be ass. Like, oh boy, that you're setting yourself up to be a hated figure in Denver because they traded a first round pick for you, and you're setting yourself to just be hated by all of the fan bases. Matt's got his hands rubbing together like a fly, but I think that you're going to prevail.
I love it.
I think that Sean Payton is going to just end up with pie on his face, just taking this opportunity.
I'm sorry if you're a Saints fan or a Broncos fan. I am, but I'm not.
Well, maybe if you're a Broncos fans, don't really deserve.
Broncos fans, I mean,
deserve any of this. But.
Yeah,
it's not on you.
Saints fans, though.
Saints fans, it is on you. That is your fault. What's your problem, man? But no, I think they're the biggest loser. I feel like more interesting ones, but again, we got to get the easy ones out of the way. And there's probably another easy one, Theo, if you want to go next.
I've got a really easy one. One of the big losers is the Cleveland Browns.
Actually,
it's a little bit of a surprise.
It's a little bit of a surprise, but I think I know where you're going. Go ahead.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson didn't retire, and he's still their quarterback.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I kind of I don't disagree. I agree. Like that's a problem.
Sex addicts are getting exposed. You were looking at I know Blaiden can't even enjoy what's going on right now.
I can't, bro. I'm over here like, yeah, the draft was okay, but Deshaun, like, I can't tweet anything about any team without someone being like, bro, isn't your quarterback like?
He wants to listen to the Kendrick song and just can't quite. He's like, God damn, man, Deshaun Watson's my quarterback. I can't enjoy.
Well, really, if you want to make a big criticism, I don't his cap hit is still.
I'm joking. They're not actually
mean,
losers. I just I'm getting it.
I thought with what
it is worth noting Deshaun Watson's cap hit is still over $60 million over the next 3 years, and until they fix that, it like there's nothing they get like until they get these void deals in place. There's like. It's a problem. So until they fix that, Theo, I don't think you're like that far off, but I appreciate you saying it's a joke.
No, my real one is the Commanders. I just don't know. I see their new ownership, and it doesn't necessarily look like there's two. It was so bad under Dan Snyder that maybe I shouldn't even say that. Like it is getting better just because it's not Dan Snyder. But I just look at Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels, and their offensive line coach is like Bobby Johnson, who was the Giants' offensive line coach last year, and their offensive line like didn't get that much better, even though they've spent a bunch of money and brought in a bunch of guys this offseason. I just don't like their direction. And I know we've been over it, and I don't want to hammer on Jaden Daniels like too much and all negative. Like he could maybe he can bomb it out. Maybe he can be the fully realized version of Sam Howell and like, run around and actually create big plays all the time instead of having sacks at a historic rate. Like the downfield accuracy could connect a little bit more often. Like maybe it'll be the fully realized version of what you're looking for. But I just think long-term, Cliff Kingsbury just doesn't have the vision to build a contender and build out a strong offense for a quarterback. I look at everywhere that he has been. Texas Tech with Manziel was his, or not. Yeah, that was, no. Texas A&M. Texas A&M with Manziel. They won some big games there. But then at Texas Tech, obviously he worked with Mahomes, but they didn't win anything. And then he goes to Arizona and he worked with Kyler, but they didn't win anything. And then he goes to USC and he works with Caleb Williams and he runs around, but they don't win anything. And now he's working with Jaden Daniels. And it's even less of a Daniels thing, even though I think they made the wrong pick, than like their coaching staff is just not inspiring to me, headlined by Cliff Kingsbury and Bobby Johnson. And Dan Quinn, I think, is a fine name at head coach. He's a safe name. He's a retread. He's done it before. He was in the Super Bowl and he had a great defense in Dallas, but he was in the Super Bowl with Kyle Shanahan, right? And now it's Cliff Kingsbury. And whenever he played good offenses in Dallas, it seemed like his schemes got a little picked on, and now his personnel isn't as good. So it doesn't even really have to do so much with Jaden, although I would have taken May, as it is like the staff that they built. It seemed like they wanted Ben Johnson and got frozen out and built a staff of mid.
It's not all Dan. Like I think had they taken May, they wouldn't have been like the biggest loser, but they wouldn't have been a winner,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think even outside of Daniels, let's say they had a really good offseason, but we disagreed with the Daniels, like probably wouldn't have them here. Probably wouldn't say they're one of the big losers. But a lot of their free agency signings, not great. Like the Luvu pickup. I'm biased, but I think he's a good player. And I like some of their draft picks, like Newton was a big one. And it's not all bad, but they made a humongous volume of moves. They did a lot, which I guess is what you want. But again, even if the process of making a lot of moves and having a lot of draft picks is good, I have to actually think the individual moves are good. And with Washington, the hit rate just wasn't high enough. I don't think there was any phase of this offseason where I came out saying they were a big winner. They were my big winner. Outside of when they picked Newton, I was like, okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it just feels like they've always kind of been questioned by us with the coaching carousel. Like free agency, I thought it was fine for them. Like, I don't know. It was fine, I guess. I don't love Wagner. I don't love Eckler, but if Eckler's probably better than what they had last year, and Doris Armstrong's fine. Whatever. But the coaching and then the quarterback decision to me is what nails him in here. So, Blaiden, who's your loser?
I mean, I'm going to get the last kind of easy one out, in my opinion. The Atlanta Falcons.
Sure.
I mean, dog, I just don't get it. I don't know how many times we'll have to say this. I just don't understand the vision. And here's the thing. Even if we're just looking outside of the Penix pick, I think Kirk Cousins was a fine addition, but he's, again, 36 years old, 35 maybe, whatever, coming off an Achilles tear. Like, I just don't see the vision for this offense taking the massive leap that it needs to from last year in order for them to be like a true contender. I guess, like, in theory they could win the division because it's not a great division, but I still think Tampa's better than them. If I'm being completely honest, I don't know.
I mean, I think they misplayed the quarterback stuff. I think I agree about Kirk Cousins. I don't have the guts to be like, he's going to be bad, but
that's the thing. I don't think he's going to be terrible. Where
it's a dice roll. It's a very big contract for somebody coming off an Achilles injury. And I know we've seen more success with guys, and Kirk Cousins already is not like, he's not Lamar Jackson. So I guess I question exactly how much, like, maybe reduced mobility would hurt him, but it's not an easy thing. And footwork's a big part of being a quarterback.
It's not reduced mobility. It's the footwork stuff. It's like that kind of an injury. It just makes you think a little bit differently, Like, someone comes at you, feel pressure up the middle. How do you respond differently than you would have before that injury? I don't know.
Right. And again, he's older. At any time, the arm strength can start to go for guys. He's definitely in range where I'm not confident he's going to be good all the way through that contract. Now, maybe the Falcons aren't either because they picked another quarterback. But, at the end of the day, I think it was kind of a reach to go Penix. So I think it really was a reach to go Penix as high as they did. And they didn't really add a lot to their defense, which I still think isn't going to be that good. The whole offseason really comes down to whether or not in 5 years we look back and say, is Penix good or not, and how they could save it. So you believe that Penix is going to be a franchise quarterback, then it was the right decision. Even after everything they did, It comes down to that. But I think the odds are against it. And if they had been aggressive and gotten a Dunze, I think you could at least have the tune of, well, if Kirk Cousins is as good as he was last year, you have a lot of weapons. You have a really good offense around
you could have
maybe
felt
even
good
better
about
than what Minnesota had, or at least
I would have felt really great about their offense at that point if they were like, yeah, we're going in with Rome and London and Pitt. I'm like, okay, yeah,
Bijan.
I see the I
and they're
would
still
definitely
going
see
in
the
with a
vision
lot
there.
of those guys, but their receiver depth is not great. It's really not good. Like Mooney and Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore is another guy where I think it's a recognizable name, but I don't think he's like some great wide receiver 3.
Yeah, that time he messed up Sean Wade will carry him for a lifetime.
And how did they go this entire offseason and still I'm looking at their edge rush room and being like, who is getting to the quarterback? Like, how is this? It's been so many years since they've had a good one. It makes me wonder, what's the longest a franchise has gone without a good player at a certain position in sports?
The Bears at quarterback.
The Bears at quarterback. Yeah, it's not a bad
Browns
one.
at quarterback.
Ooh, yeah, it's been a long time. The Packers at linebacker, I fear.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've kind of beaten this to death. The Falcons pick Penix at 8, but
who's your next winner, Matt, and make it a heater.
Yeah, we've gone through all the boring picks.
I'm gonna say that I really like the Bengals, to be honest with you. I'm a fan of them. I think that you still have T and you still have Hendrickson, even though those weren't guarantees.
And they demanded a trade, and they just
demanded a trade, and they just ignored him. Now I think this is probably going to end with it all. They don't have the money. Mm-hmm. Mike Brown is not a very rich owner, and it really hurts him, right? When you're trying to sign these big contracts. But I really liked their draft. I think they did a super strong job. The only thing that maybe pulls me back a little bit is losing Reeder. I really, really, really wish they had just kept him. I didn't think he signed for so much that they had to let him walk. But I thought Chris Jenkins was a really good addition. Yeah. I think it's very easy to talk yourself into the Bengals next year getting 100% back. Burrow does his thing. You believe in the tackle play. You think Mims will stay healthy. The receivers, honestly, if Burton breaks out, I think he could. They could be the best they've been. Gesicki, as far as tight ends go, I think is an upgrade from Irv Smith. I feel like at the minimum, he's a real pass catching option, which Irv Smith, really isn't.
Mhm.
And then I think they're going to be back defensively, at least a decent amount. So I liked what they did. They're kind of working from a position where they have to pay everybody. And when you have to pay everybody, it feels like most of your off seasons are going to feel like you didn't get better or negative. Like they're at the point where maybe their window's closing, and maybe it still is going to be pretty tough for them. But I thought they did a good job inspiring faith for another season. So I liked it personally.
I don't disagree at all. I don't have too much to add to it. They retooled, I thought, very well. They had one of my favorite drafts. I completely agree. I thought they had a smart free agency, just the little things. Zach Moss. We talked about how maybe it was a bad idea for the Texans to give up picks for Joe Mixon when it seemed like he was about to be cut. Alternatively, it's good for the Bengals to end up getting a pick for him when they were about to release him. So that's nice. Geno Stone, I think, could be nice, not only getting him, but taking him away from a division rival. And, we'll see what comes from that. Hopefully they can stave off these trade allegations throughout the summer because they definitely need, especially Trey Hendrickson. They just cannot trade him, and I don't think that they will. But yeah, despite the trade stuff, I think they did a great job.
When it comes to your feet, eBay's got your back, because with eBay's authenticity guarantee, real experts are checking your sneakers, every stitch down to the sole. Me personally, I'm a big fan of a classic Air Force, or maybe a nice suede or leather boot, but whatever it is that you're adding to the lineup next, head to eBay. From the drop to your doorstep, eBay does not play with your sneaker game. Just look for that blue check mark. So ensure your next purchase is the real deal. Visit ebay.com for terms. Hey there, folks. Ever had a frustrating ticket buying experience, especially when trying to catch an MLB game? Well, I know I sure have. Last minute tickets, seats, deals. It's like a wild goose chase, but fear not, because I have found a solution that is a total game changer. Introducing Game Time, the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. Prices on the app actually drop as the first pitch nears, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat. It really is the stress-free way to snag MLB tickets. Now, I've been browsing through the app, and let me tell you, it is a gold mine with upcoming MLB games, high-profile events, and deals that'll make your wallet smile. Game Time truly has it all. Plus, features like panoramic seat views before purchase, mind-blowing. But wait, there is more. Priority on last-minute deals, flash deals, zone deals, and all-in pricing. Game Time has your back. And with their lowest price guarantee and flexible customer service policy, it's peace of mind all the way. So don't miss out. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code BlaidenK for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, so don't forget to redeem your code. Download now for last-minute tickets and the lowest prices guaranteed.
Is there a bigger winner than Will Levis this offseason? They keep him. They bring in Mason Rudolph, but he's pretty much the clear starter there. They get him a new offensive-minded head coach. They spend big on a weapon. They spend big on a tackle, 7th overall. Like they really built around Will Levis. They didn't focus on replacing him with like Penix or something like that, or it's the offense has got some new life to it. They spent on L'Jarius Sneed as well. Like, man, he's in a situation where all of a sudden he was the second round pick and his career all of a sudden was in immediate jeopardy. Now he may as well have been, the 11th pick last year, right? Like he's got everything at the helm, and he's in total control of his own destiny at this point. And, based on what he did last year, I'm going to pull up the stats real quick. That's not necessarily a guarantee for him.
No, second round picks do not always get investments like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that the Titans did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you should just say the Titans are winners. I mean,
See, I don't know if the Titans are winners. I know that Will Levis is a winner. Like, I don't know if this is gonna like work out for the Titans, but it worked out beautifully for Will Levis specifically. So we'll see if he's able to parlay it into actually being a long-term starter there. But he's gonna get a very legitimate chance, and I think in terms of like not a team, like he's got to be feeling just euphoric about the offseason.
Yeah, I'd be excited.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I
stay hot legend.
Maybe stay hot legend. Maybe it feels like it's a given that they wouldn't go quarterback at 7, but a second round pick is not that crazy capital. And what we saw teams do at the quarterback position, it feels a little bit more like, yeah, that is a win for Levis. And I might say that Calvin Ridley is a little bit overpaid. But I don't think
doesn't matter for Levis. Like, that's why it's like I'm not saying the Titans won, but like Will Levis won, man. Like, sure, could Calvin Ridley? Did he prove last year that he wasn't a true number one? Like maybe. Like, did they overpay for him? Maybe, but still, they made that investment in a wide receiver. Mm-hmm. They didn't say like, hey, like the Bears had Justin Fields. And they didn't give him anything. They gave him Velus Jones Jr. They said, let's address. And the Titans had other things to address. They could have given that money to a corner. And they did. They like gave money to everybody. They like kind of went all in this offseason. And yeah, I think I think that he's got to be very, very, very happy. I think they actually set him up to succeed. And we'll see if he can pay it off.
They did.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Blaiden, why don't you give us a winner now? Now.
I kind of think the Patriots are somewhat winners this offseason. Obviously, the May pick seems like, again, a layup, but I think it's the right thing. And given
some teams don't take their layups. Some teams don't make them. Free throws are not given.
But the other thing that I keep coming back to is they like to move off of Belichick, and I know it was like seeming like a mutual decision to some extent. That's kind of difficult to do, to somewhat abandon that 20-year-old dynasty. And I think to be committed to truly going all in on a rebuild, I think it was the right move. And I think that's a difficult move to make. So I'm going to give them a lot of credit for doing that, because he had not been making a lot of great draft picks for them. And he really, and the thing is, like, he didn't have to for a long time because the offense was so good. So he could just sit back and coach the defense. So I give them a lot of credit for being willing to move off of Belichick there, along with the May selection.
They've got to be feeling good too, because no one signed Belichick, so they're kind of like vindicated.
Yeah.
And if he went and like became the 49ers defensive coordinator or something, like they might be like, oh shit, like he might go get a ring or something like that. But
now
like,
he's just been on TV, man.
For real, no one wanted him. Like, and he was happy on the McAfee show, and maybe he'll never coach another team, and he'll just kind of have to come back to New England in 5 years for the ceremony, and like it'll be a pretty peaceful transfer to power, like to Gerard Mayo,
his short sleeve hoodie.
I think it's good that I like what the Patriots did this offseason, honestly. Like I can get down with that. They retained a lot of their talent.
Yes, that too.
They had like Duggar as a free agent, and Uche, who took a really cheap deal, and Owenu, who like isn't just like, why not pay these guys if they were your only good franchise cornerstones in the past? So they brought these guys back. They got Mayo, and I think that that's a decent succession plan. And it's been in place for a while, and I think that kind of forethought is going to probably benefit them in the long term. So I do.
It's not like one of Belichick's kids took over. That would be I feel like a disaster. You know,
he's over in Washington, Steve Belichick. But I think for some reason, even though on paper the roster still looks bad, I do kind of feel good that like the Patriots way is kind of transferring power smoothly, or like molding into a new generation, almost like Green Bay does with the quarterbacks. Like, this is more of a Green Bay situation than the Penix pick, even though even though that was a quarterback. Like this kind of feels like this plan was in place and has been kind of
I feel good about the Patriots quarterback situation too. Brissett and May, like Brissett's up.
And Milton and Zappy.
and Milton and Zappy. Zappy QB1, honestly, let's be real. No, I just think the Patriots didn't do anything disastrous this offseason. They didn't make any really bad picks. They didn't have any terrible signings. They didn't lose anyone huge, which I guess they didn't have anyone huge to really lose. But like you meant, like Onwenu and
they
Duggar.
They had some big names. They had some big names at free agency.
Uche. So yeah, to keep guys like that and to have a good succession plan, I think is kind of I think that's a win. So
yeah, I agree. I think their defense has a lot of talent. I think that it could be a lot better than it was last year, especially if Gonzalez can stay healthy. I think they're still probably going to be pretty bad offensively. I still think you're working from a pretty tough position, especially with a rookie quarterback, depending on when he comes in. Although I think he'll start week 1 over Brissett, but you never know. But I think they were kind of in a position where like that might just be the reality of the situation a little bit, right? It might be tough for a year. And I think they're maybe still an offseason away, but that wasn't necessarily a guarantee that they'd be an offseason away before this one. They did make some tough choices. I agree. I like what they did.
Yeah. They went after some free agents. They just got outbid. Like the Calvin Ridley price was just too high, so they said we'll wait till next year and we'll see. And I think that the wide receiving core is going to miss a little bit of speed, but if they were to outbid what the Titans even paid for Ridley, that would get into overpaid territory. So I think that it's, sometimes it just doesn't go through. It wasn't the craziest class of wide receivers in free agency. So they did kind of what they could. I think maybe the Polk pick, we'll see how that ages.
Yeah. Maybe they should have taken Marv, but I think they were right to take May there.
I'd take May over Marv. As much as I adore Marv's game. But.
Maserati Marv, man. He rocks. But we can probably get into our next set of losers here. Matt, who is the next loser that you have?
Probably the Dallas Cowboys.
Yep.
I thought this was a really weak off season. I didn't even really like their draft that much, to be completely honest with you.
They went all in, man.
Guyton, I just don't think is that good, man, to be real with you. And outside of that, they did almost nothing. It feels like an NBA team, legitimately, where they're good, but they just sort of run out of ammo to make any moves, and they're just running it back. And to me, the Cowboys don't even feel like a team that's necessarily good enough where you can run it back and hope you get the breaks and you might win the Super Bowl, but it just hasn't worked out yet. Like the 49ers, for example, they're kind of running it back, but I think they could get it done. Like they got the overtime against the Chiefs. They almost won that one, At this point, like I just think Dallas is kind of sitting around waiting. They don't know what to do about the Dak decision. And what's probably going to happen is they're either going to have to give him record-setting money, which will make it even harder to build their roster, or they're going to let him walk, and they probably will have a hard time replacing him. So I think days ahead are not looking good for Dallas. And maybe you could argue that really like this is just sort of natural, their window closing or whatever. But in my opinion, they just haven't drafted quite well enough and made other good supporting moves, and they didn't move on from McCarthy, which I feel like could have been the big thing that would have.
I disagree strongly with the drafting thing. I'll say that these last 2 years have been rough, but before the previous years before that, they were probably the best drafting team in the league for the previous 3 before that. I'll say that because they drafted CeeDee and they drafted Micah recently, and they drafted like Diggs and Bland and Tyler Smith, who's like a top tier guard. And I will say Jerry Jones, he's been actually a pretty elite drafter these past couple of years. But the last two have been bad, and I think that's part of the reason why they're stuck in the mud. Part of the reason why they didn't get better last year is because they didn't hit on their draft picks, and that's the only way to get better. Once you max out on your cap space, you have to hit just to maintain, much less be a better team. I don't disagree with you, but right now it kind of feels like
you have Dak, who is a franchise quarterback. I don't care what anybody says. And you have Micah and you have CeeDee, and you aren't really like in the top mix. Now, why is that? You didn't that. It's unacceptable, man. You spent a bunch of time like paying Ezekiel Elliott and stuff like that. I mean, they had all of those guys. Did they have all of those guys on rookie deals for 1 year? Or what, did they just miss it? Regardless, they had some of the most valuable players in the entire NFL on some of the best contracts you could possibly have them on. And they weren't able to parlay it into a conference championship appearance. Tampa Bay has been just with Baker Mayfield just got as close to a conference championship as the Cowboys have been in their entire run with Dak. And while maybe this is me thinking too much about how they've just sort of failed in this era, this offseason was just a complete nothing. I mean, it's so bad that I haven't even seen Cowboys fans say it's our year. It's not their year for the first time ever. And I'm saying this as somebody who has always believed in them. And maybe I'm a little bit too low on them. Like, they could be in the conference championship game. Like, all it takes is kind of like one good matchup or one good game.
Yeah, but maybe they play the Bucks this year. But yeah,
maybe they play the Bucks. Like, it's totally possible. But first off, I don't think it's a guarantee that they would even beat the Bucks, obviously, this far out. And it just feels like you'd have to get really, really lucky for them to win the Super Bowl, like an insane amount of stuff. If we're saying they're not in the top tier of contenders, and I think it's kind of unacceptable that they're not. And I didn't think this offseason was very good. And I think Cowboys fans are right to be frustrated. So it's hard to call them anything other than a loser. If, again, you want to say that the mistakes that cost them a championship were made before this offseason and them sort of being stuck and having no assets outside of the draft is what killed them, and that wasn't this offseason, and you like the Guyton pick and you think he'll develop, fair enough. I can get behind that. But just in terms of like vibes going into this season, I mean, how many teams go into the next year thinking like we are not better than we were the year before? Very, very few.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe if you really believe in like Diggs coming back and Guyton, you can say those two things will save us. But man, it's not a lot.
Or maybe the more based opinion, you're a big Mike Zimmer fan. How about that? If you think Mike Zimmer could really cook and not get fried in the playoffs by motion from a Shanahan tree MF, then maybe you could say it's gonna work out. I did like the Zimmer edition, but I think that their indecisiveness on Dak is gonna really haunt them. I've kind of come around to the idea where it's like, man, Dak gives you your best chance, and you've kind of set yourself up where I don't even know if they're going to get anything for him in like a trade. Like he might just be set up to hit the open market. If you think it's time to move on from Dak, like trade him right now. Like right now, it just kind of seems like
they can't because of the no trade clause.
Exactly. So it's like you've got this quarterback that is why you're relevant, really, on offense, and is an MVP candidate. Probably could have won this year, and now it's like, well, what does the future look like with him? At least we should be able to Matthew Stafford him out of here for 2 first-round picks and trade him to a contender. If that's what happened in Detroit, right? It just wasn't working out. So the fact that they kind of lost the leverage to even do that makes them losers for me. And then on top of it, you lose Tyron Smith, and on paper, you're looking about the same. So yeah, I agree with all that. I think that they could be fine. I think Dak is really good, and CeeDee's really good. Mike is really good. They're probably going to be a winning record football team next year. But yeah, I think they're kind of paralyzed right now. And that's about as much as you can expect.
Yep.
I fear.
Theo, do you have a loser? Yes.
Yeah. I'll go with something kind of sad. I'll say Malik Nabers.
Damn.
I'll say.
I appreciate you having players and not just teams.
Malik Nabers
didn't have this forethought to.
Yeah, no. Malik Nabers is a loser. I look at Rome Odunze. He's got, he's not going to see any double coverage all year because he's in such a great receiving core, and Caleb is throwing him the ball, and he gets to turn the city around, and Bears fans' excitement are at an all-time high. Like Marv gets to go play with Kyler, and then Neighbors just kind of feels like he joined a sinking ship in the top 10. Like that, like we said before the draft, it's like, how are the Giants going to be good? Like they don't have a quarterback. They didn't make really many offensive line additions. Their best offensive weapon walked out the door and went to a division rival. They did get Burns, which is nice. But overall, it's like this offense is not going to be suitable for a wide receiver to like put up numbers, especially a rookie wide receiver. So he's just a guy who is now going to have to play on Dark Souls difficulty mode. And I think that he's a loser for that reason. He could have ended up with Herbert. He could have ended up with Caleb. He could have ended up, somewhere like with Anthony Richardson. The Colts trade up was rumored. And instead he ended up with like a complete kind of lame duck offense and coaching staff. And I think that he can fight through it. Like, I think that Malik Nabers is quite good. I think that he could still be a bright spot in New York. But overall, if I was him, I would not be super excited about where I landed. So I'd rather
just be on a good team.
I'd rather just be on a good team, and maybe you can just say that the Giants are losers and Brian Dable is a loser. But again, this is 2022 stuff that or 2023 stuff now that kind of makes them losers now. But I just wrote down Malik Nabers because I was like, man, all the other wide receivers ended up in such 6 spots. Like, oh, Brian Thomas Jr., you get to be Trevor Lawrence's wide receiver 1, just right away. Like all of these. Look, I guess Leggett doesn't. But, Leggett.
Dude, come on, man. This is ridiculous. This is like maybe like. I feel like you're averaging over 1 shot at the Panthers per episode, maybe over the last 5 or 6. Look, all of their draft picks are going to be positives right away. I actually saw a graphic of like the Panthers offense going into next year. One of those.
Oh God.
I don't know, man. Lot of, and this guy will be good, I'm sure. And this white guy will be good, I'm sure. I'm getting nervous, man. But anyway.
Blaiden, how about you?
See, I'm trying not to put too much weight on the draft, but the Minnesota Vikings to me just have they give me so much concern when they made what felt like all-in moves on rookies, because they gave up all but 3 draft picks next year. They only have a first and 2 fifths. That's it. Those are their entire draft picks next year. And you're basically just asking JJ McCarthy and Dallas Turner to be awesome year 1. And I did think that the Vikings were an ideal landing spot for a quarterback, because they have Jefferson and Addison and Hawkinson. Like the talent is there, but we've said before, they tried to Texans it when they got Stroud and Will Anderson, but I just don't think these players are in the same caliber, and I feel like you gave up so many assets to make this happen. When you had pretty drastic other needs, I still think your defense has a lot of problems. Like, even though they got Grenard, even though they got who else did they get? I'm blanking on his name. They got Cashman. I was thinking of someone else, but I'm blanking on the name. But it doesn't matter. But like they still have issues on their defense that I feel like they could have addressed, and I think had they gone like corner, or maybe had they gone like Latu early and then corner with their later first round pick, I would have been much happier with their draft. And
they got Tillery. That's who you're thinking of.
yes, man. That's definitely it. They got Jerry.
They got
Tillery.
Van Ginkel. That's not.
Van Ginkel's not. Yeah, I don't know where I was thinking, but maybe I was just thinking of Grenard again. But
they got Grenard twice.
They got Grenard twice. So I don't know. I'm just not super excited for. Like, I know Vikings fans are pretty excited for this season, and like I'm not saying you can't be necessarily, but I just don't like. I don't like McCarthy
I agree
as
with
a
you.
quarterback. I don't like Dallas Turner nearly as much as I liked Will Anderson.
I agree with you. And they suffer from the rest of the NFC North are all kind of winners thing, or at least the Lions and Bears are. And I don't think the Packers are losers by any means.
I don't think they're
So
better
it's
than
like-
the Packers.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So it's like if you're a Vikings fan, it's like it's an uphill battle out of the basement of this division, and you don't have any picks next year. Like, well, I guess you have your first, so I shouldn't say
you have
don't
your
any.
first, but
like there have been way worse situations.
The meta recently has been taking a lot of swings in the draft, or not even just a lot of swings in the draft, but like, because you could say, well, the Texans, they gave up assets to move up and get, Anderson, but like the Texans are still taking a lot of swings at.
Yeah, the Texans had way more than like 3 or 4 picks this year. They had like 8.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and they're making a lot of swings in free agency too. It's just like the Vikings aren't doing enough for them to have no assets to work with next year.
Yeah, I don't think I can disagree. I mean, all the trades and moves they made quarterback and edge-wise, it just comes down to whether or not those players end up being good. I don't love their process, and I'm not like the highest on either of those guys. So paying extra for them didn't make me feel super, super good.
Here's the thing. Go ahead, Matt. I'm butting in.
The thing that scares me about saying that they're straight up losers is that I think McCarthy definitely could develop, and I think it's a really good situation. And I think even if he's not great, maybe for a little while he could be like pretty solid as a young guy, and that could move people, and he could make some high upside plays, and maybe he never turns into like a top 5 dude, but he's pretty solid, and it could take us a while before we realize like he's not like a crazy difference maker, but he also could like be a pretty like it's a very wide range of outcomes, and even if the outcome isn't like perfect, it could still be pretty good, and you could still feel good about the offense. So I don't know. I'm a little nervous. I also think Dallas Turner could be pretty good, but
I think Dallas Turner will be good, just not Will Anderson.
Yeah, they traded up a lot for just a few spots for him. Like it's gonna hurt when it's draft day next year, and you're like, damn, there's really, we really don't have any picks, man, and we finished 3rd in the division or 4th. The only thing about the Vikings though that again makes me hesitant is like, what's the Nick Nurse quote that he said? Like, we get killed on the glass, it comes down to the wire. Joel has 50, it goes down to the wire. Brunson has 50, it goes down to the wire. That's describing the Vikings, man. Nothing they do matters. They could be winners of this offseason. They could be losers. They could have ended up with Drake May. They could have ended up with Bo Nix and who cares who they ended up with. 2 minutes left in the game. They're going to be down 3 driving with a chance to win, and Justin Jefferson either makes the catches or he doesn't, and it's a coin flip on if they win every single game. So it's like what they do is irrelevant. They're like destined to being the close winner loss regression team. It feels like, as long as their skill position talent is this good and their quarterback is like inexperienced. So it's like they're probably like the exact same caliber as they were last year or any other year.
But would you feel any different about them if they went in with Sam Darnold?
I would feel different about them because I think their potential ceiling wouldn't be as high. Like I get like JJ is a bit of an unknown, and like Darnold is like a known mitter.
JJ McCarthy has more upside than Sam Darnold long term. Maybe this year it's a little tough.
I was gonna say this year I wouldn't. I'm
glad they're not rolling into it with just Darnold, but again, like I can't say that I love the McCarthy move. So I don't know. It's all gonna come down to the 2-minute warning drives anyway. Like there'll be some. They're just luck. The Vikings, like how lucky will they be? So we'll see. Did they do anything righteous this offseason to get good karma? Because if they did, then I like their offseason. But if they did something evil, then I don't.
Fair enough.
Well, I feel like that's a pretty good stopping point. I
got one more winner. I got one more.
Okay, you can have it.
Then we can stop.
Honorable mention.
The biggest winner this offseason, by far, of any individual person is Greg Roman. Can we all agree on that? There's no one. He got picked up off of the street. His reputation was in the mud. No one was going to hire him, and then all of a sudden he gets to go work with Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh in LA on like a team with like a pretty decent future and like present. I don't think he would have gotten hired as an offensive coordinator anywhere else, maybe ever again. But instead he gets like the most desirable offensive coordinator job and the best quarterback to work with of anybody, just out of the blue, just picked up and really Harbaugh is a winner as well. Instead of dealing with like the transfer portal and like the FBI, he gets to deal with like
FBI.
Justin Herbert, man. They're winners. They're the huge winners.
I have to agree. I think overall that everybody on the Chargers has to be feeling pretty good outside of maybe Herbert for a year while the wide receiver stuff figures itself out.
Yeah.
Theo.
Yeah. Am I dumb? Did that just gulp?
No. What do you drink? Like, let's see the size of this glass jar. It didn't make any noise. That's that's kind of like a small mason jar. I mean, we're getting like 7 ounces of liquid in that thing.
Sorry. The mason jar, look.
I feel like you just do it just for the vibes at this point, you know?
The mason jar is key because there is no key to the mason jar. It is what am I talking about? I was about to say there's a lid. You can put a lid on it and transport liquids, but there's also like water bottles that exist.
Yeah.
My girlfriend uses it for like coffee. Like she'll put coffee in the mason jar and then seal it, so then she has coffee at work, but it's not like a huge cup. I don't know. I get.
No,
I think it is
I
mostly
get that.
for aesthetics.
I think I will. First off, there's nothing wrong doing things for aesthetics, truly, unless it's one of those things that makes your life harder. This is how I feel about tote bags. Dude, tote bags suck, man. They're horrible. You have to go through serious pain to lug around a tote bag for most things, I would say. I don't think there's anything wrong for aesthetic. I just thought it was, because I'm the exact opposite. Like my go-to is the big plastic cups, but I also like those for aesthetic because it's, went to football games and they have football stuff on it and that's sick, or basketball stuff.
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting that the go-to cup for drinking water, it's small.
Is a mason jar is a small.
It's not
glass.
the fact that it's a mason jar, the fact that it's so small, like it's damn near a thimble.
Matt,
I'm sorry for audio listeners. Imagine like Andre the Giant holding a beer.
Imagine I'm putting it next to my chin and it goes up to the bridge of my nose. I don't know. Yeah, it could be bigger. You're right. It could be bigger.
But we went over this on the last episode. Size doesn't matter. All right. It's what you do.
I don't want to get into another edging conversation with you.
People were so. I really. The comments were killing me.
Did you Google it? Did you know what that was?
No, I did, but I didn't realize that that's what you were talking about.
How'd you know what that was, bro?
He's a TikToker, man. Honestly, I agree with the comments applauding you for like being more offline than us. And,
I also have to agree.
Like it's good.
I'm pretty online. I'm just not like. I don't know. I'm not like
you're not as plugged into the brain rot where you can just say like, oh, I was edging my lawn, and you just say that like it's like without a care in the world. That's a better way to live.
but now I realize where you guys were going with that, and I was just like, oh, I was just talking about my lawn. I don't.
So are we.
Okay, man.
We're all just talking about fish tanks and lawns, really.
So dude, can I get?
I put a snail in my fish tank. I put 3 of them in. One of them is completely gone, just gone, and I've like it's not in there. Did it crawl out somewhere? I feel like I would have seen like a slime trail, or like it out. Dead, like around the fish tank.
It definitely crawled out.
It definitely crawled out, but like where did it go? Like it's just.
Sometimes
what do you have? Gone.
Just look again. They can roll, dude. We had one crawl out one time, and we were crushed, bro. You have to be careful. They'll just do it immediately. It's like, damn.
Did you ever find it, or did it just?
Yeah, we found it eventually.
Was it alive or was it just dead?
It was dead.
Yeah,
we had one. We had 2. We had one that crawled out and we found way later. We didn't realize that it could happen, and then we had another do it right before we got like the thing to like completely cover it, or we like refinangled it so there wasn't room because they were pretty big, and we saved it. We got it before it dried up. We put it back in. It's
there we go.
Good.
Yeah, my snail definitely came into contact with like dust and just like immediately like shriveled and died.
That's
I think,
unfortunate.
but it was like immediate too. Like I put them in there, and then like I went to check, and there were only the two. I was like, how is this even possible? How is this even possible?
It's a process learning about the fish stuff. There's a little bit more to it than you would think.
I've heard
It's
there's
survival
like-
of the fittest to me. Like I don't even feel bad. Like bro, there's
little.
water in there, and there's like none where you're going.
Well, but they
Like,
don't
It
know
is,
that.
it is,
dry
a,
up.
it is a,
No.
it is a
They
little bit
don't
like,
know
not
that,
my
though.
fault.
So you crawled out and died immediately. Like, yeah.
Where did you expect?
But that's not
Don't you
their
wanna
fault.
stay
though.
in the water?
They didn't know that they're curious.
They know
creatures.
what water is and what's not. Like once they leave
They-
water, they should turn their ass back around and get back in the
You
tank.
need to
It's not my
create an
fault that-
atmosphere that is desirable. You should put like a strawberry plant that suspends over the water so that they have like.
Are you saying
food.
that the vibes were like bad there? And
Theo,
The
I want to
just
see.
said I'm out.
Theo, I need to see a picture of your fish tank, and if it is
Honestly, the
big-
the tank is probably a little bit small for the snails.
5 gallons? Are they just like mystery snails?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think.
it is fine. I saw a pamphlet that said the minimum tank gallon like amount was 10 for a mystery snail. It's like, bro, they're gonna be, but I guess they're not. But
they're good.
come on,
we
man,
have,
I
we
don't
have
need-
a 10. We have a 10 and we had 1 and it was still like it still can happen no matter what. I think they're fine. Maybe some like fish expert will comment and be like, nope, you're actually being really awful. And if that's the case, maybe you got to upgrade.
take me away, bro. Like, officer, I plead insanity. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm sorry. Please.
But when I go to PetSmart, they say it's 3 gallons minimum on the little thing for the mystery snails,
Really?
which seems a little bit like more
Fuck,
true.
you could put
as
one of
somebody
those
who
dudes
doesn't
in a
know it all.
Tupperware, and I think you'd like with a hole in it, and I think it would be fine for like a good amount of time. To be completely honest with you, it's like a snail. Maybe I'm a sick and twisted individual, but anyway.
Anywho, did you know that Matt lied to me about the Reds being good? That's crazy.
Dude, they've played. I went Friday with G-Fed to the game. Horrible. They play like dog shit. We wait through almost 3 hours of rain delay because we didn't know when it was going to stop for a game. It ends at 11:10. The only guy who had a hit was Ellie, and then we go last night, and they almost came back and won that one. And almost was a super sick, but they had like 1 run in 2 games, and I don't think they had one today against the Orioles. So if you're an Orioles fan, don't comment, don't say anything. We had a tough
16
weekend.
and 18 isn't too horrible for baseball, is it? Like,
No, they've lost a lot of their top bats, and like the guys they have, like Friedel and McLean and Marte, were all guys like they need to be good, and they just don't have 9 to put out there right now. And some of their guys are not playing as good as they probably should be. But Ellie is the truth, so I'll take it. And their pitching is way better. And Lodolo's been really... Actually, I don't know how Lodolo did today.
I will say the pitching, I felt like the pitching was pretty good. They had a lot of strikeouts.
It's a lot better than it was last year. Okay, they gave up 11 runs today, so the pitching probably sucked. But Lodolo's been mostly good.
Well, the pitcher last night, the pitcher Saturday night was great. We'll say that.
Lodolo is still overall good. Last night it was Green. Yeah, he did pretty good.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think they're still a year away.
Okay. So we'll go. I'll go back next year, and they better be good.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. But thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Stay Hot. If you hate our winners and losers, don't say anything. All right, don't care. But if you loved them, leave a pretty comment with flowers and rainbows. And until next time, as always, we will catch you on the flippity flip.